I am Robin Lane, and this is How We Love. Today's guest is film actress Rutanya Alda. Her journey began far from here, in refugee camps, while her father was locked away in a Soviet Gulag. Eventually, she and her mother crossed an ocean to America, where a different kind of hardship awaited. But ultimately, due to her drive and her talent, she created a life for herself that no one could have imagined from the start. And this is the story we are here to share. Welcome, Rutanya.
Oh, thank you so much, Robin. I really appreciate being here.
So, before we talk of the many award-winning film successes that have led to your extraordinary career, let's go back to the beginning when you and your family were displaced from your native country.
Okay. Yes. Well, it was a time of war. I was born into a time of war, and it was like my father said, you lose total control over your life because you're just not in control anymore. So at the end of the war, my mother decided there was a lot going on, and a lot of people were leaving for Sweden because it was a safe country to go to. And so my mother and my grandmother managed to get a passage on a big fishing boat because that's what they used to go to Stockholm. So we got our belongings, and the boat was full, pretty full, and we put our little suitcases on, stacked them up, and I sat on one of them, and my brother sat on the other one, and things were going smoothly until the boat was torpedoed.
Oh my goodness!
They torpedoed boats in those days toward the end of the war, or ending the war. A lot of the refugee boats were torpedoed. Now, luckily for us, we didn't sink. We just listed. And so everybody was holding on. And then a big ship came by and saved us all, and the luggage. So, but the boat wasn't going to Stockholm. It was going to, the war was just ending. It was in May. So the war was just ending. So all of us were to go to the refugee camps in Germany. There are refugee camps. There were 4 zones: the British zone, American zone, French zone, and the Soviet zone. And you didn't know which zone you were going to go to until you landed. Well, the most valued zone, the most preferred zone was the American zone. So somehow we got sent to the American zone. And like I said in my film, we were welcomed by potholes, holes in the street, crumbled buildings, bombed out buildings. And that was just how it was. Most of Germany was just destroyed. So we were sent to find a room in a bombed out building that was still had floors and stuff. So that's sort of where we landed.
And where was your dad?
My father was in the Red Army. He had been taken. He was doing my grandfather, his father was a farmer, major farmer. So they did trades. They lived close to the Soviet border. So they did farming deals there. So my father was there doing a farming deal of selling the produce when the Red Army arrived. And of course, you were asked to volunteer, because the alternative was if you didn't volunteer, you were shot. So my father said, okay, I'll volunteer. That's how he wound up in the Red Army. Now, we kept track in the Red Army. In fact, he came one time when he was at the Germans had captured their brigade, and he was lined up in front of a firing squad. And he thought, well, this is how his life ends. It ends anonymously here. He's going to be a heap of ashes there, or his body would be. And by a miracle, and I do call it a miracle. My father was a very religious man, and in fact, he was a minister. And so he just said, he just said his prayer and was prepared to go when some bomb from some army, I don't know where, but a bomb fell in right then as they were getting ready to shoot them, he and two other soldiers. And the bomb killed all the Germans and left the three of them alive. So when he was, he said, I looked for my cap. I didn't want to leave without my cap. So the two other soldiers ran away and he was in there looking for his cap. He finally found his cap. And that's when he realized he wasn't that far from our little cabin that we were in the rural part. And so he made his way home to the cabin, and that's the last time I saw him. He spent that night and the next day, and then he had to go back because if he was declared a deserter, then he would be shot getting back, and the family would be in trouble. It was a time of you didn't know what happened. So that's the last time I saw him. And when he held me before he left, he said, "I love you. Remember my face." So that's the last words I heard from him. And then, So getting back to the refugee camps,
So that you remember that so clearly?
I remember very clearly. And I remembered his face through all those years. And so we didn't know what happened to him after that. We had no idea. So he was just, I knew in my heart that he was not dead, but there was no proof. So the reconciliation was 26 years later.
Oh my goodness. So let's go back to how you got out of there. How long were you in what? I don't understand refugee camps, except for what I've seen in the movie. So how long did you stay there and how did you get out?
I stayed there till I was 8.5. And my film talks about that experience, but it's told from a child's point of view because that's how I remember it and that's how I saw it. It was a very brutal time because the American army, and I'm sure the other zones experienced the same thing. They were not prepared for 12 million refugees. They were just not prepared. And so the first couple of years were years of starvation, lack of food, lack of housing, because the building we were in collapsed, and then we were sent to another building that had no heat, and it was a time of intense struggle for everybody. And how a family survived was mainly because of my grandmother. She had skills like farmer skills. She knew the mushrooms. She knew where to go to do the mushrooms. And she was very savvy on the black market, how to trade things, one thing for another. And so because of her, we got through the really rough 2 or 3 years before the army got more organized and was able to deal with all the people. So that's how the early years went. And so we were there for 8.5 years.
It's quite a childhood.
Yes, it was. It was not the ordinary way to grow up, that's for sure.
And so how did you get out of there and get to the States?
Well, first of all, we had applied to get to America, but because my mother and my grandmother and two children were considered uh, not acceptable, because in those years you had to come with a skill, and you had to be sponsored by someone and be able to be employed right away. There were no welfare benefits. You were not allowed any welfare benefits. You had to find a job and go to work. So my mother met this man who was a photographer, a very skilled photographer, and so they got married. So then we became a
So,
desire.
so your father was declared dead?
Yes, my mother hadn't heard anything from him, so she went and had him declared dead so she could remarry. And she did. And because we had a man now that was the head of the household, we were accepted by America and sponsored by a group. And then the Presbyterian Church actually sponsored us out of Willamette, Illinois. And so they found him a job. You had to come with, you were not allowed to come in unless you had a job already. So they found him a job in Flagstaff, Arizona, in a photo shop that needed somebody with his skills that could develop pictures and take pictures, and mostly develop pictures. It was a very busy place because of Flagstaff at that time was a big tourist area with the Indian population and powwows and different gatherings. So there were a lot of tourists that came in. So that little photo shop had a lot of business.
What was it like for you when you got here?
It was, well, we were poor again. When I lived in the camps, everybody was poor. So you didn't notice that you were poor. But when I got to America and in the school, I only had one dress. And so I wore the same dress for a week and then washed it on the weekends. And so all the girls were snickering and making fun of me about having the one dress. I was very upset. And then I got some local donations. Some ladies brought me some, like 3 or 4 more dresses, and I was so excited. So I wore one of the dresses, and the next day, and a girl comes running up to me and said, "That's my dress.
Oh, no.
That's the dress I used to wear." And so
no, that is the height of humiliation.
Thank you for that, because I hid my head. I did not look at anybody for weeks.
Yes.
I was afraid to wear the next dresses because I thought, well, is somebody else going to say that's my dress? And so I remember it being very hard. So when I was 12 years old at the time, you could do this. There was no child labor law, at least not in Arizona. I got a full-time job at a motel. And so I was working, and I had some money, and so I would save up. And
what were you doing there?
I started out behind the jewelry counter. They had lots of beautiful Indian jewelry, and I would sell it. And then later on, when I was about 15, the manager saw that I had people skills. And so she hired me to be the desk clerk, the evening desk clerk from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 11 o'clock. I couldn't get there till 4 o'clock, but she said that was okay. 4 to 11, I would work behind the desk, checking people in. And I continued that job until I graduated from college.
You're kidding. Oh, my goodness.
Because otherwise, my mother didn't give us any money. They were working nights, and I hardly saw them actually, except on maybe Sundays when they just wanted to rest. So I had to provide for myself. I had to pay my own school books. I had to do my own dental care. I had to do all of these things that as a 15-year-old person until I was 19 working, I had to work and do my own things, buy my own little car eventually, because it was miles and miles. I used to walk miles and miles. So when I got my little car, I would drive. It was so much easier. At that time, you could get a license at 15 in Arizona. So at 15, I had my little car.
Well, you were certainly used to hardship.
Thank you. Yeah, it was looking back, it affected me in ways I never knew until I got older.
We'll get to that. Okay. So your first great love was what? Your grandmother?
My first love was my father and then my grandmother,
Your father.
because I had such love for my father and then for my grandmother, because she became my mother, really, honestly. She just did her best.
How do you mean? How do you mean she became your mother?
Well, she was the one that took care of me as best she could, and she was the one that went out and got the food, and then she was the one that gave me hugs, and uh, it, but again, it was a very hard time because a lot of times, like for example, one time during the cherry season, she went out. She got 3 empty pillowcases to go and collect cherries, because we would go to the black market and sell them. We would sell some to the GI Joes, and then we would keep one bag, and she would do the preserves. But she was gone, like a lot of times, like for the cherries, she was gone like 3 days. And my mother was gone. So I was in that, I got really scared that she wouldn't come back, but she came back and I was so happy. She would have never left me. But my mother was a different person. She was still young, and all her youth was being taken away from her. So she did her best. I think what happened is, looking back, because when she would go for 2 or 3 days, she would come back with a lot of food, like sweets and cakes and cigarettes that she could trade. So I think she was like one of those ladies of the evening.
Your mom was a lady of the evening, but I thought she was married.
Well, before she got married to my stepfather, during the early days, she went.
Oh, you mean in the refugee camp?
In the refugee camps. Not, no, I'm talking. This happened in the refugee camps.
Yeah, in a refugee camp, I would have been a lady of the evening too.
Yeah. So it's. She never talked about it because I thought she would think she was a terrible person, but that's what she had to do
To survive.
to survive.
Yeah. 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 So, and what was your stepfather like?
Well, he didn't like us. He tolerated us. So in the early days, there was a lot of inappropriate touching going on. And it really affected me the rest of my life, because
You want to talk about that?
I was just a kid. Well, he would put me on his shoulders and rub me back and forth, like waiting for some kind of, that I would feel something, that like an orgasm or something. And then when we were in America, then my mother went away for a year, and my brother was sent to live with my aunt for a year in Minnesota. And so I was alone with my stepfather, and he did a lot of inappropriate touching. And although there was no penetration, he didn't rape me, but I was like trembling in my bed when he came around. I would just tremble and tremble.
Oh my God. I mean, I cannot imagine the things you've endured. And you went on to such a successful career. It's remarkable.
Well, my movies were my only escape. I would go Saturdays and I would go Saturdays at 11 a.m. and not come out till 11 p.m. So I'd see the same movie over and over again. And so,
You're kidding.
in fact, that helped me learn English. I learned English through seeing these movies. But that was when you could do it. That's when nobody cooked you out. So I made a little peanut butter sandwich and got some water and went to the balcony of the Orpheum Theater, which is still there, by the way. When I drove through Flagstaff, I wanted to see if the Orpheum Theater was still there, and it was still there. It kind of gave me a sense of comfort that it was still there. But that was my movies were my savior. And I loved stories, and I would read stories, and I would act them out in my mind. And sometimes I would read them out loud, and became that character when I read those stories out loud to myself. It was like, and then of course there was the radio, Mr. Keene, who knows what shadows lurk. And then the shadow knows. Then there was a Lux Radio Theater, and on radio. So, and then there was the Lone Ranger. So I would come home in the first years in America, I would listen to the radio, and the radio made such an impression on me because you would see these images in your mind. You know, I would be there, rather, I should do first person. I would be there, and I would vicariously go through all those experiences. And Lux Radio Theater Presents was a new story, a new drama story every.
Excuse me for interrupting, but a lot of kids do that. They listen to stories. Now it's television, and they identify with it. But how did that turn into an acting career?
Well, I saw my first movie when I was in the refugee camps. When I was sent away for a summer because I had really bad lung issues, because our refugee camp was across the street from a major locomotive hub, which spewed coal dust, every a lot of coal stuff. And I got affected by that coal in my lungs. So they sent me away for a summer in the mountains where the sick kids were. So I was one of the sick kids. And I'm sorry, I lost track of what you asked me.
How did it turn into, the identification with the characters on the radio? How did that turn into a movie career? Acting.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. I saw my first movie there. And my life it was the turning point when I knew I wanted to be an actress. I was only like 7.5 years old. And I was so mesmerized by this,
But this is when you were in a refugee camp.
Yeah, this is in the sick kids camp in the mountains, where they every month or so, every couple of months, they would get an American movie. And this was a movie with Gary Cooper and Paulette Goddard, which I recognized later when I saw it. It was a Western. And I can't remember the name of it. I should remember it, but it was a cowboy and Indian movie. And I thought, this is like things I had never seen before. Cowboys and Indians and villagers and fighting back and death of this little girl, which I identified with.
No, I understand that. And that is what makes kids and people go to the movies. But how did it turn into an actual career for you? I mean, people identify with characters in the movies so they wouldn't go to see them. But you went one step further, and given the hardships of your background, it's quite astounding. So how did that happen, that you became an actress?
Well, I knew then and there I wanted to be part of the story. I wanted to be in the story. So I just never lost track of that need. And when I was in high school, I signed up for every play that they only did like 3, 4 plays a year, but I signed up and I got little parts in the plays. And I thought, oh, this is heaven. I can be part of another story, and I didn't have to be part of me. It was me, but I was in a story. And then in college, when I did plays, I asked my manager if I could have those weeks, couple of weeks off. And because I was considered such a valued employee, that he would let me have those weeks off to do theater, which is like 2 plays a year, basically. So then I expanded my repertoire. And then it's funny because I said, I have to go to New York. I have to go to New York and study with the best people. I have to become the best actor that I can be. And when I told the regional manager of the Ramada Inn, his name was Mr. Falkenstein, I still remember his look. He said, we are such a wonderful employee. We want you to come down to the major hub, whatever, the major office, and we're going to train you, and we're going to give you your own motel, and you'll be part of the whole system. And I said to him, Mr. Falkenstein, I'm going to New York. I'm going to be an actress. And the look on his face was priceless. What do you want to do that for when you're going to have a great job and there's great job opportunities and we love you? What do you want? I said, well, I'm going. Thank you very much for your offer.
So when did you come to New York? At what age?
At 20.
And what did you do when you got there?
Well, I had one Samsonite suitcase, used one that I bought or somebody gave me, I forget. And so I got off the bus and landed in what is now the Port Authority. I didn't know it was just a big bus place. And I checked my luggage into one of those coin things that you put in. And it was early in the morning. It was not that early. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning. And I got a New York Times, and I sat down at this coffee shop and I opened the Times to where apartments for rent. And I had a map, kind of a map of New York beforehand. And I knew that the numbers at like 42nd Street, and the numbers went uptown. So I was looking I saw one that was a really awful, and that just kept going uptown. And then it was late in the evening. It was at 7 o'clock. I was at this brownstone at 123 West 85th Street. And the landlord came and looked at me, and I said, I'm here for the apartment that you have advertised in the New York Times. He looked at me, kind of didn't know. And he said, well, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Arizona. And he said, oh, I love Barry Goldwater. He said, the apartment is yours. And I thought, God bless Barry Goldwater, who I had met. I had checked into the Ramada Inn. I had met him on several occasions.
And what did you pay for that apartment?
The apartment was $100 a month.
And that apartment today would be what, $4,000?
Please, because it was a huge room with a separate kitchen and a bathroom, separate bath.
For those that don't know New York, that happens to be a wonderful neighborhood.
At that time, it was a rough neighborhood. New York Times did a whole article on what the worst street in New York was.
Yeah. But I remember I lived up there. What they called rough back then was not rough today.
Oh, it's a beautiful neighborhood. And that was a beautiful apartment in a brownstone, just a large room. And
so what did you do next?
Well, I thought to myself, I gave him the $100. I only had $200 to my name. So half of this was gone. And then I joined an acting class right away, pretty much. And that took like another $25 of my money. So I was left with $75. So there was an actress in my school that needed an apartment. And I said, "Oh, wonderful! I've got an apartment, but there's enough room for 3 beds. We could." And then a friend of mine introduced me to a ballet dancer, Julie, who was dancing with the Balanchine.
So there were 3 girls in one room.
Exactly. And because then we only paid $33 each, and we were both like short of money, and so that was the perfect amount of rent for us.
And how did you survive? How did you earn a living?
I had to go and did these when you got these part-time jobs, when you had these part-time agencies, and I would do a day or two here and a day or two there.
Oh, you mean temporary work?
Temporary work.
Right. And when did you get your first acting job, and what was it?
My first acting job was in a summer stock at the Berkshire Playhouse, which is very well known. I got a job as I was considered apprentice, but I got to do one play there. And I had a major role in that play, and that really was inspiring. So the next summer I went, and I was a member of the Yarmouth repertory company in Yarmouth, Cape Cod. And then I got to do, maybe out of the 6 plays I did roles in 5 of them. So that was when I was really, it was a
So obviously you were very talented.
Well, thank you.
And people spotted that quickly.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And then I continued studying. I was always studying. I was studying with all the major teachers, Stella Adler, Lee Strasberg.
And the first film that you did?
The first film that I had a role in, that had a major part in, was the early Brian De Palma film called Greetings. And my scene was with Bobby De Niro. And it's a very funny scene. It's a 12-minute scene. And it was just terrific. I loved working with Brian because he liked people that did improv, and I was really good at improv. So, and that was followed.
So you played opposite Robert De Niro?
Yes. It's a very funny, it's a strip scene. He's a guy that wants, it gets me to come up to his apartment and strip.
So you did a strip scene?
Yeah, we didn't go all the way. We just went to underwear, and then the camera went.
And what did that lead to?
That led to Brian De Palma's second film called Hi Mom, which has a scene in it called the Be Black Baby scene. It's about a 15-minute scene, and Richard Schickel of Life magazine wrote it up as the scene. He wrote that whole scene up, and it was a very powerful scene, and I had a really good part in it.
Do you want to tell our listeners what Brian De Palma is well known for?
Well, he's well known for all the basic horror, the Alfred Hitchcock type horror movies that are. He did major films for many years that were very successful, earned a lot of money. The one with, Michael Caine and Angie Dickinson, I can't remember the name of it, but I'm just blocking.
It's okay. Our listener can Google it.
Yeah, but Brian had me in to record voiceover on Angie Dickinson's taxi orgasm and taxi scene, and he had me do the elevator scream. In fact, he wanted a 1-minute scream, and I said, Brian, he says, you can do it. I did. But I said,
screaming for 1 minute is hard, but I think it's harder to fake. Well, a lot of women wouldn't think it's harder to fake an orgasm.
It was, I watched, I mean, I love Angie Dickinson, so this is nothing personal, but I watched the text and I said to her, why do you want to do the, because Angie's wonderful. And he showed me the scene. It's a 2.5-minute orgasm scene.
Oh my God.
And he went, and it was in the taxi, and she didn't go very loud. She's very subtle, like, He wanted it like big. So
Can you still do that?
I probably could if I said to Brian, I have to watch it because
Let's hear you do it.
Oh, oh, oh.
Okay, okay, okay.
Uh,
So when did you start to actually get important parts?
Well, it was little by little. I got it was I got started getting some parts in television that was shooting in New York, like the early NYPD one. I got I had a part in Gene Kelly, working with Gene Kelly in Hello Dolly, and I also did all of Barbara Streisand's photo doubling. But it was working with Gene Kelly was for 6 weeks was like, I was such a fan. He was so sweet to me. But let me look at I can't remember the order of where I went.
It doesn't have to go in order.
The biggest part I got that really was an Oscar-winning movie was The Deer Hunter.
Oh yes.
And I play Angela the bride. So I'm in the wedding and the funeral.
And that was Robert De Niro in that one?
Yes, he was in that. In fact, I called him and I said, I heard it was casting, and I said, is there anything in it for me that I could read for the director? And he said, yeah, there is part of the bride, and we haven't cast that yet. He said, I'll set up a meeting for you with the casting director. And the casting director, I didn't have to meet her. She just called me and said, Michael's in town, so he'll see you, Michael Cimino. So I have to laugh because I went in, and this was when a director, because had confidence, and he didn't make me read at all. He just talked to me for 45 minutes. And then he thanked me, and I got up to leave, and the exit door and the closet door were side by side. So I went into the closet door, and I stood there for about maybe 20 or 30 seconds, realizing that I had made
utterly humiliated.
Utterly humiliated. I thought, I opened the door very slowly, and I said, I think I got the wrong door.
So the director hired you just on the basis of conversation with you, or had he seen other work that you'd done?
Well, he'd seen other work that I had done, and other work that, especially the early Bobby De Niro movies. But then
so and Robert De Niro were really good friends.
We were good friends for a long time. Now I wish we would be in contact again, but Bobby's career has gone off on a whole other he's a major movie star. And so things change, relationships change, but he was a very good friend to me.
And what was the next big part that you had?
The next big part I had was Mommie Dearest.
With Joan Crawford.
I play Carol Ann. And again, it was like with Michael, Frank Perry. I went up to meet him. He didn't require any reading, no auditioning, I again talked with him for about an hour. And then he said, thank you. It was right a couple of weeks before Christmas. And so he said, thank you. And we said goodbye. And on day before Christmas, he called me and said, well, you've got the part.
That's really interesting.
The early directors were like that. Kazan was like that. Oh, I forgot to tell you about Kazan.
Hold on. Our audience doesn't know who we're talking about. We're talking about a very famous, award-winning film and stage director called Elia Kazan. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, he had seen me in the Hi Mom, the Be Black Baby scene. And he wrote me a postcard, and saying he really loved me in that film.
My goodness, I'm awed that he would do something like that to an actor.
they don't do that anymore. He loved actors. He loved act. I became anyway. I was in LA at the time doing I went out for like a year, and I heard he was casting The Last Tycoon. So I wrote him a letter at Paramount.
Who starred in that?
Bobby De Niro.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't get that one through Bobby. I got that one by writing him a letter saying, "Do you remember you wrote me such a lovely postcard about Hi Mom? I work at Hi Mom. Is there anything that I could audition for you?" And next thing I know, the casting directors calling me and said, "Can you come to Paramount such and such a time at such and such a building and meet Elie Kazan?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely." So I went. This is very interesting because the early directors had such confidence in what they saw. So I walked into this room, which was very long, like I'd say 50 feet, narrow and long. And Elie Kazan was there by himself, no producers, nothing, by himself at the end of that room with it behind a table. And when I walked in, I could feel him taking me in, taking my energy in. So by the time I went and sat down, he said, "Well, you've got the part."
Oh my goodness.
I was.
Goodness. I don't think that happens today in today's world at all.
Doesn't happen today.
Yeah.
People, they're put through the hoops, and they don't see you anymore in person. They have to see you on some video audition. So it's a different time. So I said, "Now," he said, "Can you type?" And he had an old typewriter there. And I said, "Yes," because one of the things that I was pretty good at in high school was typing. So I sat down and I started typing, just to type anything you want to type. So I just one of those things. And I said, "Oh," he said, "Stop." And I said, I think I made some mistakes." He said, "I don't care. You look like you're typing. You're a real typist." He said, "You look like a real typist." So I was one of the 3 secretaries in Robert De Niro. He played Monroe Starr. When he comes in, the one secretary was the one that took all the papers. I was the one typing, and one of the other girls did something else. So,
all right. So let me move on. Let me ask you something. So you've won some awards, right?
Yes, I've won. I've won for Mommie Dearest. I won. What is it? The Razzie Award.
That's not a good. That's a negative award, isn't it?
I know, but I wish that they had told me. I would have gone and accepted that award.
Could you explain to our audience what a Raspberry Award is?
It's the worst film and the worst performance. Faye Dunaway won for Joan Crawford, and I won for Carol Ann, the supporting performance. But,
now let's talk about the positive awards.
Oh, well, I've won Best Actress in a lot of the off Broadway drama, desk award, and the off. I was very big in off Broadway. In my early career, I did a lot of it. That was when there were a lot of off Broadway theaters, and
so you were a bit of a cult actress.
I was a cult off Broadway actress. Yes. And I did do one. I came close. I did do one major show, which I understudied Marion Haley Moss, our mutual friend.
Yes.
And unfortunately, they sent a critic that hated comedy, so we closed the next day. But I did at Theater Row. I did a major play. It was 3 of us, called Murder at Howard Johnson's. I got a lot of recognition from that.
I'm going to divert you from that for 1 second, okay? Because our program is called How We Love, and obviously one of the things that you love clearly is theater and performing. But also you were married.
Yes.
Tell us about that. So obviously you must have fallen madly in love with someone.
Yes. At the beginning, it was very, I was madly in love.
And he was?
He was Richard Bright. He was a wonderful, talented actor.
And you met him and fell in love. How?
I met him when I was always living in LA for a couple of years in the 70s. And he was doing Marathon Man, the big
The movie with Dustin Hoffman?
with Dustin Hoffman. He was the guy that pursues Dustin, and actually puts him in the bathtub and holds him under.
Was that a lead in that film? A second lead?
Yes, he was a second lead in that movie.
So he was a well-known actor in the industry.
Yes, he was in all three of Godfathers, worked with Coppola. He was Al Neri, major part in the.
And was he handsome?
I thought he was very handsome.
Okay. And how did you meet?
Well, he didn't know very many people, and he was a Marathon Man for like 2.5 months. And some friend of mine said, "Well, why don't you call Rutanya?" Because he was looking for people to just hang out with or go to dinner with. So he called me and he said, I knew who he was because we were actually in the same movie together. We were in Sam Peckinpah's movie, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, but we weren't on location at the same time. But I had seen when Sam screened his movie, I saw Richard Scene and I said, well, he's a really good actor. And Sam thought so too. So he said, well, we were in the same movie together, but we didn't have any scenes. I said, I remember you. You were wonderful. And so he said, well, I am looking for some people to go to coffee with a dinner on my days off. And I said, okay. So we arranged to meet at some coffee shop and have coffee. And that's how I met him. I mean, I met him outside of knowing who he was.
No, you were absolutely gorgeous. So I'm sure he was quite enamored of you very quickly.
Well, thank you. I was just in those days, I was just a lot of fun. I was like a free spirit in those days.
Is that a dog I hear in the background?
That's the downstairs dog, which
oh my goodness, that must drive you crazy.
I locked my cats up in the bedroom because they would be here in front of they would just be in the middle of everything.
So let's go back to, what was your husband's name?
Richard.
Right. So let's go back to Richard. So how did it become a marriage?
Well, we saw it. He decided after Marathon Man, he decided to stay on for a year, so a little bit more than a year in Hollywood and get some television parts, which he did. And then we just kept seeing each other for about almost 2 years. And I think we became really good friends. And then it got serious.
So let me ask you, you're saying you became friends without chemistry?
We had some chemistry, but we didn't act on it for the first year. It was the second year that we became intimate.
When did the chemistry start that it became, irresistible?
It started about probably a month or two after we saw each other.
I would think so, because you were both so good looking and in the same business. I can't imagine that the enormous chemistry wasn't there, but you resisted it apparently for a long time. And so after a year or two, you kind of felt that you had something deeper in common?
Yes, we just decided that we were a match. We were both actors. We understood the industry and the demands of the industry. Now I look at it and I think you should never marry an actor because they have the same issues that you do. And for me, it's like when you experience the same issues in your partner as you do yourself, it's kind of a struggle.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
It's like he was only really happy when he worked. So when he worked, he was really happy. And he wasn't he wasn't that happy for me. I mean, he was happy, but it was almost about it was about him and his career. And I think that's
So you
happens.
think you're surprise, surprise. You're telling me he was an actor who was highly narcissistic?
He was like it was about himself and his career.
Well, of course, he's an actor.
Yeah, and that I didn't
Yeah,
anticipate.
there was no true give and take.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
I understand.
correct.
So you fell out of love.
Well, eventually, not right away, but eventually, because there were other issues that were overwhelming to me,
What do you mean?
uh, uh drug issues.
Oh, he used drugs.
Yes, I didn't
That,
know,
yeah, that is something you can't get over.
can't get over.
No.
And he not when he was working though. That he would stop, but I didn't.
I'll tell you something, Rutanya. Part of his inability to really connect to you would have had to come from the drug, because when you are a drug user, you're preoccupied with nothing but that.
Well, that's sure I found that out. It was very painful because Robin, I didn't understand what it meant. I was so naive. I didn't understand what
If
it.
you weren't naive, okay, if you're not a drug user, you can't understand why this person that you're in love with is suddenly changed like this. You can't possibly.
Yeah, I didn't. It was like,
No one does.
oh, okay. It was like, you know how you think, what can I do? How can I help? All of
Yeah,
that.
right. Because you think there's something wrong that you can fix. You don't understand because they're lying to you. You don't understand that they're using drugs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you finally did find out, is that when you left?
That's when I left.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And he had a strange ending, didn't he?
Well, it was really, yeah, it was strange. I had just talked to him because we kept in touch because we shared a son. But I had moved out to LA at that time just to get away, just to get. I just needed a space where I was free of all of this, and but I kept in touch with him, a couple of phone calls a week, and he said, "Well, I'm going over to." There was a coffee shop on a block away, and he used to go there all the time in the evening because he had a friend there, Tony, that the owner of the shop, they get along with, and so he said, "I'm going over to Tony's, and so I'm on my way, so I'll talk to you in a few days." Well, what happened was about 30 minutes later, a friend of mine calls. He said, "I just heard on the news that Richard was killed." And I said, "Well, I just talked to him. What, I don't think that's true." And he said, "No, it's on CBS News right now. I'm watching it. This Godfather actor is killed. The bus was making a turn and ran over him, even though he had the right of way with the light. He got caught under the wheels, under the rear wheels, which is different on a big bus. They can miss you on the front wheels, but then the rear wheels hit you unless the driver is very experienced."
I'll keep that in mind. And how did that affect your son?
Well, he was 18 at the time.
He was an adult. Yeah.
Because we were living apart. I was in California, he was in New York. And but we came back. We always came back during the Christmas holidays, December, January, and then at that time the season started in February, and then we would come back when the season ended in California, which was like the summer, July, August, those months. And so he would see Jeremy, but I limited the time, but I didn't want my son to have his father be a mistreater. Like I didn't want him to think that. So I wanted him to actually know him on some level, but it was on.
But it couldn't be full out because of the drug use.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I understand. So moving on from there, so he died what year?
I'm sorry.
What was the year that he died?
He died in 19. let's see, hold on,
Just roughly.
roughly. He died in the early 80s.
Oh, it's a very, very long time ago. And then your career went on. Because if anybody goes to Wikipedia and looks at the number of films that you've been in, they're enormous, just enormous. And so, because we're going to have to wrap it up pretty soon. So tell me where you are today.
Well, I made my own film. I wrote and produced it and wrote and performed in it about my early experience growing up in the refugee camps and what happened to my father. Where I met him, he told me the story of how he survived, his miracle survival in the gulags, where like 95% of the people died. So I felt like
So tell me about, just quickly, can you just give us a couple of minutes about you and meeting up with your dad?
Yes, I met him when I found out he was alive. He had just come back from the camps. They were closing the camps, and I had another aunt, the farmer aunt, who had her farm taken over by the Soviets, who had welcomed him back. And then so she wrote a letter to my scientist aunt who was living in Florida that my father had returned, but the letter was delayed by 2 years.
2 years?
Yes, the Soviets had control over everything, so it arrived 2 years later. So this was in 1969, the summer of 1969. So I said, I have to go and meet my father. I just have to do this. So I went. I went in I was very poor then. So I went in cheapest way possible. So these the connections, I won't bore you with that. But I met my father, and I had 10 days with him before I had to leave because they limited you to 10 days. I couldn't stay with him. I had to stay at a hotel because it was all about the money. Then they wanted the American money. So he told me the story, and I said, what happened to you, Papa? He said, I will only talk of this once, and then I will never talk of it again. And so he told me the story. In between, we couldn't talk in the hotel room. It was microphone. So we had to do it when we were walking, or we were in trams, or we were in the cemetery or a park. So he told me then what happened to him. So then I finally got to know what he went through. So in my movie is a two-parter. It's my growing up in the refugee camps, and at the same time, it parallels my father's experience in the gulags.
I have to tell you, I think you're an absolutely remarkable person.
Oh, Robin.
And I think anybody that hears this story is going to think the same thing, that you have gone through what you have gone through in your life and have then turned it into a successful acting career, a career that most people cannot make a success and survive and earn a living from. And yet you have gone on to do that. Is just so much about your strength. You are so strong. You're a role model.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you.
You are. And on that note, my dear friend, I'm so grateful for you giving us this interview. And we'll say goodbye for the time being.
Oh, Robin, thank you very much. Thank you. I admire you so much. Also, I think you're an amazing woman.
Thanks again.
Okay.
Rutanya Alda.